the need to go and borrow so that we can somehow get ahead and get things. When we have a good plan, we can see, oh, I actually don't need the bank's help for a certain purchase. I don't need the bank's help to get a vehicle. And when we're thinking long term, I don't need the bank's help to get a house. I can do that myself, again, if I'm consistent and diligent enough, because, I'll use my personal situation. My wife and I, we make decent money. We don't make a ton of money. We make a little bit above the national average. The national average is like 61,000 this year, or maybe that was last year. Probably a little bit better this year. My wife and I make about 70. Okay. We spend about $3,800 a month. Okay. So let me just get my calculator to make sure I'm right.
That's the nerd in you coming out.
Well, I gotta, I can't just give the number and be way off. Okay. So, about $45,000 a year is what we spend. Okay. Because we stay consistent, because we stay diligent, our goal is to buy our first home with cash before I'm 30 years old. We've got 4 years to go, and we're right on track to meet this goal. Making $70,000 and spending $45,000 a year. Now, again, this is, $70,000 is a little bit above the national average. I totally understand that. But we're able to save $25,000 a year to reach our goal. Almost every family can do this. And if you're not making at least the national average, which is $61,000 per household, that's a household of a married couple. If you're not making that much money, you need to figure out how to make that much or more money. Because if you're below average, obviously that's an issue. We go back to what I was talking about in the last episode. We need to get creative, think outside the box, understand our value, and start creating more in the marketplace so that we can provide better for our family and reach the goals that we're trying to reach. But it comes down to changing our behaviors, right? Income is how we build wealth. Income is how we get the things that we need and want, not by borrowing. And if you have these types of numbers, again, we don't make a ton of money. If we were making more like $100,000 or $150,000, our lifestyle would be exactly the same. Our expenses would be the same. So $100,000 minus the $45,000 that we spend per year. Well, now we're saving $55,000 a year. So even with what we're doing, $25,000 a year, you can see how, over the course of, what is that? $25,000 a year, 150 divided by 25. Over the course of 6 years, we can buy ourselves a $150,000, like I said, starter home. We're not going to get an amazing, immaculate home, a dream home for our first home, but we're not going to have a mortgage our entire lives. Never will we have a mortgage. And so all of that money that we would be spending on a mortgage, we're going to have our house that is building equity that we have paid for. And all of that money we would be sending to the bank in payments, we're going to continue saving. And we're going to continue saving that $25,000, $30,000 per year. And then once we have more cash, plus the equity of the home that we have bought with cash, now we can sell that home and take the cash with the sale of the home. And now we can upsize in house. And now let's say we get, another $150,000 saved. Now we have a $300,000 house within 20 years by the time we're 40 years old and not a single payment, no mortgage. So, I mean, awesome. This is the type of thing that we need to understand in our country, is that we have access to work and to make money, and we are designed to work and to provide and to benefit the body of the Messiah and the marketplace and the people around us. We have that ability. We have that freedom. And like I said, almost every immigrant who comes here completely understands the opportunity that they have, and they maximize it and they capitalize on it. And we all need to do the same thing, but it comes down to understanding your value and then making sure that you are diligent with planning and not spending more money than you make. It's really not that insightful, and it's hard to understand. It works extremely well if you do it.
Awesome. Okay. Now, that was actually great epilogue dialogue here. Now we're going to get into the actual question of the episode. So what is the difference between credit and loans? And a lot of people actually misinterpret the difference between the two.
Well,
Now, obviously, credit is also still a loan, but it has a different aspect.
Yeah, so credit is what people look at to decide whether or not you can take on a payment that you're looking at taking on. So building our credit, what we're doing is building what's called your FICO score. Okay, your FICO score is determined by the three major credit bureaus, and basically they track your payment history and they determine what your score should be. And then people who are going to give you a loan is someone who, it's money that's being given to you in the form of a material or cash or whatever. So like a vehicle, you are being loaned the vehicle with the expectation that you pay for it as you use it. When we go and get a loan, the person who's giving the loan looks at your credit score. And so even like what I was saying with houses, when you go and get a mortgage, the mortgage lender looks at your FICO score. Okay. And that's why if you have a 0 credit score, you have to go to someone who does manual underwriting. It's the way they used to write mortgages, I don't know how long ago, but a long time ago. And the reason they would do it like that is because the credit score either wasn't in existence or wasn't really a form of something that lenders looked at. So they would underwrite your mortgage based on your lifestyle, and that would be the determining factor as to whether or not you could take the loan that you were looking at getting. But now it's strictly based on your FICO score in most cases. And so your credit basically is your FICO score. What is my credit? Oh, it's, what's your credit score? It's 700. All right. Well, can I get this loan that I want to get with my 700 credit score? And then, obviously they'll look at, well, are you currently employed? This and that, but almost 100% it's based on your credit score.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny how credit scoring all works. And like I said in the first episode, they need to teach more of this stuff in school, so people can know what they're getting themselves into.
I made a Facebook post. I'm going to reference it right now because it has to do with credit. So I put this post out there, and I'll just dig it up real quick, so bear with me for a second. I put it out there because no one really knows that they're just not taught, and they don't fully understand how your credit score is even determined and what it means. A lot of us are confused, and we think that your credit score shows how well off you are financially, and it has it has nothing to do with how well off you are financially. Your credit score has nothing to do with that. So your credit score, let me see, we're almost there. Just a moment. Your credit score is 100% based on your relationship with debt. So I've got a breakdown of percentages. It's your FICO score is determined by the types of debt that you have and how long you have them and things like that. So here's the percentages, okay? 35% of your FICO score is determined by your payment history. 30% of it is determined by the amounts that you owe. 10% of your score is determined by new credit. 10% of your score is determined by the types of credit that you use. And then the last 15% is determined by the length of your credit history. So the credit score is 100% based on your relationship with debt. The only way to have a good credit score is by making your payments on time. That's the only way. You borrow money, you borrow things, and you make all your payments on time. When someone tells me they have a good credit score, you want to know my response?
Want to know more? Join us next Friday as he answers the question to those who say they have a high credit score.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? You see, when I was trying to get my podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of questions. Questions like, how do I record an episode? Or how do I get my show into all the apps that people use to listen to podcasts? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it is completely 100% free and and super easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that is exactly what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. So if you always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to Anchor. Go to anchor.fm/start and join me in a diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I cannot wait to hear your podcast.
Greetings, this is Steve Salyards, the author of The GA Junkie, and here are some Presbyterian history notes for the week of November 17th. Sunday, November 17th. In 1840, the Association of Non-Subscribing Presbyterians in Ireland petitioned to have their two theology professors added to the theology faculty of the Royal Belfast Institute. The Institute quickly approved the request, and later in the month, 6 of the other faculty members resigned in protest. Monday, November 18th. On this day in 1823, Huron Presbytery was organized at Brownhelm, Ohio, with 5 ministers, of which 3 were present. The presbytery was formed at the request of the Presbytery of Portage to the Synod of Pittsburgh, and the Synod agreed and divided off that portion from Portage. Tuesday, November 19th. This is the birthday of William Billy Sunday in 1862. He was a pro baseball player in Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. He turned to religion and became the preeminent revival preacher of his time. He began as an assistant to Presbyterian revival preacher J. Wilbur Chapman and was ordained by Chicago Presbytery in 1903. He was influential in his support for Prohibition and the 18th Amendment. Wednesday, November 20th. In 1541, the General Council of Geneva adopted John Calvin's ecclesiastical ordinances after nearly 2 months of debate and editing. It had previously been approved by the lesser councils of the city, and this made the document setting out Calvin's form of church government official. Thursday, November 21st. On this day in 1638, the Church of Scotland Glasgow Assembly convened, following the rejection of the King's mandated liturgy and the signing of the National Covenant earlier in the year. Alexander Henderson was unanimously chosen as moderator, and when the Assembly moved to remove the bishops, the King's Commissioner declared the Assembly dissolved. The Assembly continued anyways, declaring that the King had no authority in ecclesiastical work and on their right to meet. This was the first Assembly since 1615, and the first of 3 where Henderson would be chosen as moderator. Friday, November 22nd. This is the 170th anniversary of the chartering of Austin College in 1849. It was chartered by the state to Brazos Presbytery of the Old School PCUSA. The college had been organized on June 21st of 1849. It remains affiliated with the PCUSA today and is the oldest institution of higher education in Texas, still operating under its original charter and name. Saturday, November 23rd. Let's jump 200 years earlier to 1649. On this day, the Commission of Assembly of the Church of Scotland approved the text and ordered the printing of what would be known as the Scottish Psalter of 1650. The book derived from a Psalter approved by the Westminster Assembly 6 years earlier, but the General Assembly had some concerns, and over 2.5 years it had been heavily revised for the Church of Scotland to improve the texts and make them more singable. On this day, the Commission also set the date of May 1st, 1650, as the date for introduction in the churches. This Psalter is still in print and still in widespread use in some Presbyterian branches. Thanks for joining me here on the EAR podcast, and I look forward to joining you again next week.
You have reached the end of yet another episode from The Ear. We hope that God's Word remains on the ears of the listeners. We pray that this podcast would urge you to go forth and spread His good news to the world. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. See you at the next episode. God bless you, and may His glory shine upon you.